Have you ever gone through a season of your life where everything just felt quiet? Not peaceful quiet, but the kind of quiet where you suddenly realize how much things have changed. The house feels different, your routine feels different, and sometimes even your heart feels very different. A few years ago, when I went through a season like that, um, a season where the life I had known for more than 20 years had suddenly changed. And even though I had family and friends who were supportive and caring and were there for me, there were still many nights where I sat with my thoughts and realized something I'd never experienced before in the same way: loneliness, absolute loneliness. But what I didn't realize at the time was that this lonely season would become one of the most important seasons of my spiritual life, because it was in that quiet place that God began teaching me things about myself, my faith, and my purpose that I might never have learned any other way. Hi, and welcome back to my channel. So, this channel is a space for women who are rebuilding their lives with God, whether that's emotionally, spiritually, personally, and women who are learning to trust God again, rediscovering their identity, and becoming the woman they were created to be. And today I want to talk about something many women experience, but don't always talk about openly: the season of loneliness. Not the kind of loneliness where you simply don't have plans on a weekend, but the deeper kind of loneliness where life has changed, relationships have shifted, and you find yourself trying to understand why you are in a completely quiet season. So, lesson number one is loneliness reveals the parts of yourself you have been avoiding. One thing I very quickly learned during this season of loneliness was it was like holding a mirror up to myself. When life is busy, when you're in a relationship and you're raising children and you're working and moving, you can sometimes avoid the deeper questions about yourselves, ourselves. But when everything slows down and the noise just kind of fades, those questions start to kind of resurface. Questions like, who am I? What do I actually want from life? Have I been living the life God truly intended for me? And those questions can be uncomfortable, and we hate uncomfortable, but they're also incredibly important, because sometimes God allows the quiet times so we can finally hear what our hearts have been trying to say. During that lonely season, I had mornings where I'd wake up feeling so overwhelmed and uncertain about the future. But I had to slowly begin to realize that even in those moments, God's faithfulness hadn't disappeared. In Lamentations 3, verse 22 to 23, the Bible says, "The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh each morning." And that verse reminded me that even on the days when I felt emotionally exhausted, God was still giving me the strength to begin again. So, lesson number two that I learned is that loneliness can deepen your relationship with God. Before that season, my faith had become somewhat of a routine. I believed in God, I prayed, I went to church. But if I'm being honest, I wasn't always seeking God in the deeper way that I needed to. But when life changed and I found myself navigating everything on my own, parenting, finances, rebuilding my life, I realized I needed God in a completely different way. Prayer became more honest, more vulnerable, less polished. Instead of perfect prayers, sometimes I didn't have the words and would just simply say, God, I don't know what I'm doing, but I need your help. And in those moments, something began to shift. My relationship with God became less about routine and more about dependence. And we see in Jeremiah 29, verse 13, it says, "If you look for me wholeheartedly, you will find me." And during that lonely season, I started looking for God more, and I was more intentional about it. So, lesson number three that I learned was that loneliness teaches you strength you didn't know you had. And this one is fire. There's something about navigating life on your own that reveals a strength you didn't know existed inside of you. When my life changed, I had to step into responsibilities I had never fully carried on my own before. So, managing a home, you do it together, raising children, you do it together, your monies, you do it together. When life is challenging, you have each other. And some days I was like, what am I doing? And doubted everything. I wondered if I was strong enough to get through it. But I slowly realized something important. God wasn't just helping me survive that season, He was helping me grow. And I love this verse in Isaiah 41, verse 10, that says, do not be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. And looking back now, I can see that the strength I was developing in that season was preparing me for the woman I'm becoming today. Lesson number 4: loneliness creates a space for transformation. One of the biggest things I've realized about loneliness is that it creates space for reflection, space for healing, space for growth. And when we're constantly surrounded by people and activity, it's easy to stay the same. But when life slows down, you begin to ask questions that you never asked. And sometimes those questions lead us to rediscover parts of ourselves we'd forgotten. For me, this season became a time where I started connecting with the woman God created me to be. And in many ways, it became the season that eventually led me to kind of start this channel, because I realized that maybe my story, my struggles, my rebuilding, my faith journey could help other women walking through similar seasons. In Corinthians 1, verse 4, we see that God tells us that He comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort others. And sometimes the very season that shapes us are the ones that eventually allow us to help others. So, if you're in a lonely season right now, I want you to hear this clearly. Loneliness does not mean God has left you. Sometimes it means God is drawing you closer. It means He's preparing your heart. And sometimes it means He's quietly shaping you into the woman you're meant to become. The season that feels empty today may one day become the foundation of your transformation. So if you're in that season, just remember you're not alone. And I would love for you to comment, like, and subscribe, and join me on this journey of becoming her as we continue to heal, as we continue to grow our faith, and as we continue to rebuild our lives with God. And remember, your story isn't over. God is still writing it. And together we're becoming the women He created us to be.